Hey, Bill, how you doing? It's so good to see you.
Good to see you, Charlie. Been a
Yeah,
little while.
yeah. Thanks for setting the time aside for me and for the audience here. I'm sure that they're going to learn a lot from you.
Well, I'm glad to do it. It's always great to get together and chat in
Yeah.
any venue, and especially this one.
Okay. Well, what? Let's start with just to kind of get a baseline here. Is just like what are you up to these days, so that people know a little bit about your activities.
Well, I am up to being a grandfather, and that counts. That's a new role I took on 4.5 years ago. I've been adding to the responsibilities. I should say my kids have been adding to my responsibilities as they add grandchildren. So we're at three. We're going on to four next month, and
Wow.
that's the best time I have and the most rewarding. There's a difference between
No
things
kidding.
being rewarding and things being profitable. This is the most highly rewarding, but that's really what I'm after. So I'm having a wonderful time with that. So that's what I'm up to. That I
How many
enjoy.
kids? How many kids do you have?
I have three kids, boy, girl, boy. I'm blessed. They're all in Atlanta. I didn't know that would happen.
Okay.
When they went out to school, two at Georgia Tech. The third one's at Tech now for an MBA. And
Yeah.
so they stayed in Atlanta. I thought, like my brothers, that we'd head off in different, my brothers and I are very close, but we live in different cities and all that. But my kids are all right here in Atlanta. So I'm very blessed that way.
And they're all married and they're all having kids.
They're all married. Two of them are having kids so far, and it's all right here in town. So I count that blessing. Those things can always
Wow.
change, but I mean, you count your blessings when you have them. So, but yeah, no, it really is terrific, and
Is there
that's
any difference in involvement in the grandchildren from that your daughter had versus the grandchildren that your son has had?
I don't know if there's a difference there. I mean, between children and
I
grandchildren.
mean, of engagement is what I mean. You know?
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty similar. I think as you know,
Oh,
when you
that's
have
good.
kids, you don't hold your tongue on anything. When you have grandkids, you do because they're not your kids. So that part is universal. But as far as kids, my daughter gave us a granddaughter, and my son grandsons, and it's a perfect formula.
Yeah, but it's
It's
like your wife. I forgot what's your wife's name again. I met her
Judy,
the other night.
Judy, Judy.
Judy.
Yeah,
Judy. Yeah. It's just like Kathy is. With a daughter, it's different, right? When a daughter has a baby, she wants her mother, to be involved. But when your son has a child,
hmm
then she wants her mother. His
yeah.
wife wants his mother. So it just makes it a little bit more of an arm's length sometimes transaction. I think
Well, I think
makes it
there's
a
there.
little less intimate sometimes.
Yeah, there's a different element to that to be sure, but I think what we found is that it's equally rewarding and it's a little different.
Yeah.
But you take the best of what you get from everything, and I just think it's been a great balance. So we're just very happy,
Well,
and we
good for
just
you.
do our best to
So you
do
have
what
four
we can.
grandchildren,
Yeah, well, fourth on the way, three right now.
fourth on the way,
Fifth is arriving next month. So
and they're all the oldest is how much? How old?
four, four.
4 years old. Wow, you just getting out of the gate here. Our oldest is going to be 10 in February, but our youngest is just turned, well, not quite. She's like 1.5, I guess. So we're about at the same stage that you are. But it is interesting when they start getting into 5 and 6, they turn into real people. So it's kind of fun. So you're in for it, man. You're in for it, but you're up for it too. I know that you and Judy would be going to be great great grandparents.
Oh, we've had.
What about the professional side? What are you involved in?
Well, I
What are you doing?
I
Say.
am I unretired 6 years ago. I think my last corporate undertaking was I was CEO of Porex Corporation, which was marvelous, and then I retired. That was in 2017, and And then I undertook a mission to go to do what I loved most, and that was work with technologies at early stages. And that's what we did at Porex. We launched a lot of very innovative products, but it was very different. So, I unretired and I slowly got back into it with the Georgia Research Alliance, and I'm still actively involved there. I'm a senior advisor, still working with eminent scholars, bringing technologies off of campus. I love that work.
How did you go from Porex being a president and CEO
Mhm.
to all of a sudden getting involved in the community at something like Georgia Research Alliance?
Well, I knew some people
How
there.
did that
Not
happen?
many. Not many. Well, just over lunch. I was, let's see, somebody I worked with, Bill Matthews. He was with Heidrick and Struggles, and I knew him well. And it started with that. He said, "Hey, you should talk to Susan Schaus now that you're retired. She heads. She's the assistant director there at the time of the Georgia Research Alliance. And boy, what you know in what Porex did internally, the products it brought to market, the technologies developed, that's really applicable to a lot of the things they need to do to get people from the
Oh,
private sector to weigh in." I said, "Okay, great." So we went and had lunch, and I met Susan Schaus and Lee Heron. These are people around here at Atlanta. Everybody knows them well. And they said, "Hey, we'd love to have you join us in a capacity and help some of these earlier companies get off the ground and help some companies that are off the ground that are having trouble." And so I said, "Great." And that's where it started. And from that, Susan said, "You need to meet
I
the
didn't know that. I didn't know that that's what they did. I thought what they're doing is, like
Mhm.
you said, they're bringing in scholars from other universities and trying to bring that
Right.
them and their knowledge and their following, their network into Atlanta, into
They are.
Georgia, if you will.
They are. But
Yeah. How did
the
yeah.
second part of this is that no technology or product is worth anything until somebody buys it. Really, it's all theory until somebody buys it. And so, the idea is to take the product of the thinking and work of these eminent scholars, for example, and other leaders there at the university, and take
Mhm.
products that lean on university, any university in Georgia, any university or college that leans on technologies, patents out of those schools, and work to commercialize it. So the GRA the GRA Ventures Group rather there's grants and loans to help companies get off the ground, bring products to market, and then the GRA Venture Fund, which is private investors, operates like a venture fund. I sit on the board of that, and we invest in like any other venture fund in companies that are scaling. But again, the focus is on technologies coming off of Georgia campuses. So it's a very active organization, and it's very high profile in that university setting.
So this executive recruiter, you said his name was Bill too?
Yeah, Bill Matthews, and
Bill
just a
Matthews. Yeah.
super
So
guy.
when he was talking to you, obviously you had a relationship prior to you probably when you were working at Porex, I would guess.
That's correct. Yeah.
And yeah, and here you are, you retire from Porex as president and CEO. Why
Mhm.
did he think it was a good idea why did he think that you still wanted to be involved as opposed to how's your golf game?
I think it's because Bill. He was a senior partner with Heidrick and Struggles. He knows people. He placed a lot of people in Bard, and that's where I met him. And then at Porex, so I worked with him for many years. He knows people. I think he recognizes things in people, what they want to do, what they're good at, whatever that may be. And he's just a thoughtful person. So that's why I think he did it. He said, "You know what?" And maybe he knew I was a bad golfer and couldn't fish and wasn't smart enough to play bridge. I don't know, but through all of that, he just made that introduction, and I really appreciate it. That's how these things start, right? One person
Well,
introduces
he
another
has to know though,
person.
but yeah, but I think the thing is he has to know that you have that interest.
I think so. I think so, and
Yeah,
I'm
and so
I'm
he
sure.
knew you well enough to say, "Man, he still
Sure.
has a lot of energy and a lot of interest and a lot to share."
Yeah,
And so he threw out the line and said, "Bill, what do you think?"
I
And
think so.
you bit it. you said, "Ah, man, that sounds like a really cool thing." So then how do you go from, so you met these people and that got you, well, first of all, just a bit on Porex, just to give a little bit of your background. I've heard you say this before. You were responsible, I think it's on your LinkedIn, that responsible for growth at Porex, okay? By
Right.
by growing your current products, right? Sales in your current products, but also finding new technologies.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
So what was it that Forex, what did Porex do? And what exposure did that give you as in that last role that you had that made you valuable, like to GRA, if you will?
well, I came into Porex as the CEO.
Yeah.
That's how I started. And I spent 14 years in that role. And the company changed a lot over that time. Some of it due to my decisions, some of it due to more so due to a lot of good collective decisions by a great team. But I came in from the medical device industry. It was
Okay.
to be the largest market for Porex. It was moving in that direction, or needed to, and that's why when I met with the folks that made the decision, they said, "You know where Porex is trying to get to, the markets we need to serve, the higher profit, higher growth markets." And so they brought me in as the leader, and my mission there. Well, first of all, you're the CEO. What's your mission? Market leading growth, and an outsized return to shareholders. And we did that. We put up some terrific financials over the years. We did two turns with private equity, and we exited, very profitably. And the current holders of that, it is private equity held by Madison Industries. It's continuing to be a big success. But the company, that the mission in there, in order to get to those returns, was to leverage the technology. It was a materials company. We made everything we made was out of plastic, polymers. But what we really made was filters, vents, wicks, diffusers, media for bioscience and drug screening. The media that was used to in the high throughput screening and drug testing for vaccines, for example, as we went through the COVID dilemma.
Okay.
Those materials were developed in Fairburn, Georgia, and it was to leverage that technology into a much greater presence in bioscience, biopharma, and medical, and that's what we did. Those were terrific markets, still are.
Are you an engine? Are you a materials engineer, or
No, I think we
how
talked
do you
about
know all this stuff?
this before. Well, do you know what? I'm a geographer, and that's what
Oh,
I
that makes
studied.
sense then. It all makes sense.
No, that's what I studied. That's what I enjoyed when I came out of school. And I do believe this. I look back, how did I do all that? Well, I'm very pleased and proud and satisfied with where I am in life and what I did with my career. However, would I like to say it was part of a grand plan? Sure, but it wasn't. It wasn't. What I did was I followed that which interested me and inspired me. So I graduated and I took a job with a laboratory equipment company. And from that, got into medical devices. And as I went along, and I was in sales to start with, my greatest interest was in the product area. And the products and applications fascinated me. And then as I moved up in the organization at C.R. Bard, it's now Beckman Dickinson, I took on responsibility for business units that moved more towards
What industry
developing
were they in, by the way?
technology. Oh, medical
What
devices.
industry? They were medical. So you stayed in that
Oh,
industry.
yeah.
Okay.
Stayed in it.
All right.
And so I was very interested in developing the technology. Now, I didn't have the academic background, but I ended up running Porex, which was the front end of that is a group of engineers of different types and polymer scientists and people inventing, creating new solutions to common problems, and the
But I
inventiveness
don't
to people
understand. If they're
pursue.
a, if they're a polymers company,
Uh,
when you joined them, what was the revenue as a polymers company?
well, the thing is, it moved around a bit.
Can
We
we
had
talk about that?
four divisions. I can talk about that. And in that polymers group, we went from about 50 million or so, and we went from there to
Yeah.
about 180 and
Okay.
180 to
So what
200.
is,
So,
but
but the important thing was the markets that we did that in. We moved away from the
yeah, but
industrial
I don't
consumer.
understand. If you're just a polymers company, they're a polymers company. They like you as a leader, but your background is medical devices.
Right.
That's the
Well,
industry that you played in. That was your sandbox. That was a constant, it looked like, in your career. Why were they attracted to you as a polymers company to
because
run the company?
they didn't make the polymers. Porex purchased polymers and then turned it into something else. It's like when you
So
when
they
you
weren't just commodity people. They were
no,
actually doing value add with polymers. Okay.
exactly. They were taking flour and sugar and eggs and turning it into a cake. And so the products of Porex, and this is where the real interest was, not that there isn't a lot of technology in the polymers themselves, but that's just a raw material. That's the clay we work with. And we turned that into products that are, on the market today. People have, it's the most uh, uh, anonymously famous company in the world because the products of Porex are all around. They're in they're in everything from food dispensing devices to air fresheners plugged into a wall. And then, as I said, in COVID research, the media that allowed for the testing, they are in medical devices and drug dosing. When people take aerosol drugs, there's a high likelihood it's a Porex technology that doses the medicine. I mean, that's what
Were
Porex
they
did.
manufacturing these things, or
Yep.
was it more IP
No,
royalty revenue?
no,
Manufacturing.
manufacturing. In fact, what made Porex interesting was that it was a product development company working in partnership with our customers, all of which these were the academy companies in medical and bioscience and other industries, worked in partnership within confidentiality agreements. But we developed a product, but then we also had the capacity to manufacture it most effectively. So we went right from the concept, an idea, to a finished product being used in high speed manufacturing. So it really is a unique company, and for everything that went on inside and all the development of the technology, it was still something that was a very closed system in that we partnered with our customers and we did some other work with companies. We helped technologies we got off the ground, investments we made, things like that. But it all happened in house. It was virtually 100% in house and 100% secret to the outside world.
That's incredible. And were you involved on the ground in a lot of this new technology as the CEO?
I was, yes, I enabled it. I wasn't the smartest guy in the room,
Oh,
but
I get all that. Yeah, but
my
you were
job
able to ask the right
has,
questions. You knew enough.
well, sure. And what does the CEO do? The CEO, the most important thing a CEO does is set direction, allocate resources, and make sure the right people are in place. That is what, if the CEO gets that right, the everybody else makes everything else work. So yeah, but because I did that, but because I had such interest, I spent a lot of time meeting with customers and being in customer discovery meetings and engineering think tanks because I just loved what we did, and I tried to stay out of the way where the conversation went over my head. But I mean, it's contagious, and I mean, I have a couple of patents on medical devices, and that is not
Personally.
because yeah, and that's not because I sat in a room by myself thinking about what to do. That's a product of sitting in a room full of a bunch of smart people where thinking goes next level. And all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off and you capture it and you say, that's something that's marketable. And so we pursued them. Porex had a lot of patents. A couple of them were mine. And that comes from, I can picture it right now as we sit here, those rooms of smart people and who was sitting around the table and how the process went. It was as much
And were
fun as
all
I
the
dreamed.
smart people Is that right? Were all those smart people in Porex, or there were some outsiders involved in that room of smart people, as you call them?
It was both. I mean, Porex had and has a brilliant crew of people, and who are like-minded in this regard. They're very inventive. They're problem solvers. But then we bring in customers, and I tell you, customers, and I've learned that over the years. Always bring your customers into a room. You know, companies go out and sell a product. There's their story, their pitch. They're selling a product, and the customer is at the other end, thinking and asking questions and making decisions. And at the end, they say, "I'll buy your product." Well, if you really, this is in my experience, if you really want to do your next customers a favor, you'll get to know your current one really well and know why they buy from you, know what decisions they made, what was their thinking in how they decided. Rarely in this business was the decision based on price, even though everybody talks about it. That was never the decision making. That was never the criteria. The criteria was a lot of other things, but basically it was how doing business with Porex made them more effective doing business with their customers. And in that, the collaboration, to your question, collaboration between the customer and the Porex people was seamless because we were helping each other. And I don't want that to sound cliche, but I mean, those were terrific
I have
relationships.
never heard, I have never heard a CEO say with such downward voice inflection that the collaboration between our company, okay, and our customer was seamless.
Yeah.
Is that just the way that industry operates, or is that
Well,
was that unique really to Porex and something that you brought to the table?
I think that it's how we operated, not all the time. That was our goal. Believe me, we had some bricks fall off the cart a few times, but that's how it should operate. And I think any industry can operate that way. And we did have a culture that said we want to be with our customers. We don't want to be important or merely important or uh, you know to the customer. We wanted to be vital. We wanted to be integral. And when you do that, you build a relationship that's hard to break apart, and you do it based on trust and honesty. We don't take advantage of anybody, and when you do that, you build customer relationships that last decades, and that's what Porex has proven. But
Oh,
and any
absolutely.
company can do that. Any company can do it. But I think the important thing too is you learn a model of operating, and I firmly believe in this, that is applicable to your next customers, the ones you haven't met until tomorrow. And then you have a method of operating, a cadence that works and that is very constructive. So yeah, any industry can do it. I just think the better companies take more advantage of that than others.
Right. It's funny when you said you really listened to customers. It reminded me of a story of there was a guy that I ran into this was probably in the mid '90s.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into this guy, and he had a reputation for turning around startups for VCs.
Mm-hmm.
So these startups that weren't doing very well. And I said, "Well, how do you do it? I mean, what's your secret?" And he goes, "Oh, it's pretty easy." He said, "I basically go out to the customers and I just ask them why did they buy the product and how are they using it?" I said, "That's it?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "No one ever talks to customers." So I went out and talked to them. And once I talked to them, built a relationship with them, I knew what they wanted. We got rid of the stuff that didn't make sense and we focused on that. And that
Mm-hmm.
turned the company around. And he said, "I've done it 5 times." I was
Yeah.
like, the simplicity of it is kind of ridiculous, but
Well,
it's pretty amazing the way he pulled it off.
I think it's absolutely right. And when I say a CEO, the number one job is to set the direction. It doesn't happen
Hmm.
sitting in a room all by yourself, reading something out of a book. It is, I agree with that. I think that's the only way because your customers hire or fire you every day, right? I mean, that's and that decision that they make. I mean, the rest of it is chasing, running around in circles, unless you have the customer hiring you every day and
It's
rehiring
interesting though.
you.
You made the comment though. The CEO sets direction, okay, and then
Allocates
assigns
resource.
resources.
Yeah,
So
allocates.
resources, and then the last thing was the right people, right?
Yeah, get the right people on. Larry Bossidy, I knew Larry Bossidy, who was the ex CEO of Honeywell and Allied Signal, and he used to say all the time, "Get the right people on the bus." And I love the expression because the bus is moving.
Yeah,
Get the people on the bus. And
yeah.
it's like, and he would always ask when I would talk to him, he'd say, "Do you have the right people on the bus?" And I think, oh boy, I knew the question was coming. So that's what he wanted to talk about. He didn't talk numbers. I mean, he could, but he wanted to know that. Do you have the right people on the bus? And it was the right question because it means for all your planning and everything, do you have the people that are going to get it done? Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just a bunch of slideshows.
I agree with that. I talked to. In fact, I was giving my son-in-law, who's got a business now. That's a reseller business, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and it's growing very, very rapidly in the segment that he's in. And he's got a great partner. They're a great team, and off it's going. And of course, they're starving for cash, right? Because it takes money to make money. Particularly if you got inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I said, the one thing I learned in business is that be really, really picky about the people that you're bringing on board.
Right.
Even if that you're bringing them on more slowly than you would like. If they are the right people, they'll get ahead of you and surprise you,
Right.
and you do really, really well. And A teams, A level teams, if you can pull that together, man, you have the greatest chance in the world to be a great success.
Well,
Versus dealing with turnover and wrong person and all that messes that you do. But you said something about setting direction when you said the CEO, of course, sets direction first. The first place I went was, yeah, you're sitting in the room and you set direction. And you come out of your office and you go, hey, this is what we're doing. And you just said that that's not true. That setting direction is a communal activity, not only internally, but externally.
it is, and and setting direction is a process that gets to an end point where then you say this is the direction. But that's exactly right, because nobody's smart enough to do it by themselves. And by the way, financial goals, financial plans, we're going to be number one. All these things are all important, but those are outcomes. These are all outcomes. There's no direction that we're going to sell $100 million. These are all outcomes. The direction is, and you always bring your whole group with you, because if you've done it right, like for me as a CEO, I looked around the executive table and everybody was smarter than me, and that was great. Now, in my mind, I'm not telling them that, but I knew that. But that's why they were there. So when I had a dilemma or I had a problem, yeah, the end point was Bill's the CEO. There was the decision. The process to get there was I'm leaning on other people to come up with the right thing to do. I never got paid to come up with the best ideas. I got paid to recognize them when I heard them. And so, and as any CEO does. And so you lean on that, and then through their organizations, everybody is finding that direction, and then you're testing it. You're testing your theory, your thinking with your customers, and you can be so open with customers. They want to tell you what they're doing, what they need. People are afraid to listen, but they will help you formulate a strategic plan. It just makes it a piece of cake. And so when you do that, yeah, you have to land on the final decision and articulate the direction, but it's not somebody at the top doing it. It's the product of all that great thinking. And I'd like to think that when I look back on big, important strategic decisions we made, I can't sit there and tell you any of those were a light bulb that popped in my head. It was recognizing from within that team what emerged as the right
And
thing to do.
what you did is you talked about a couple of things. One is to be sure the people that are in the room are smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you accumulated a really good team. Secondly, is you were secure enough in who you were and respectful enough of who they were to make it a conversation. You didn't have to be president, CEO, well respected, smartest guy.
Right.
That's what I don't see with a lot of CEOs. They were, in fact, they didn't have that secureness, that security that you had that said, "Hey, look, I'm just trying to get to a good endpoint here on direction," And I'm going to say, I don't know. I don't know. I have a few ideas, but I don't know. You're telling your staff and your peers you don't know, but you're also telling your customers you don't know.
Mm.
That's I don't find a lot of that out there. How did
Well,
you adopt that operating style? I mean, does that come from sales?
maybe. I mean, I've always said everybody should be in sales, whether they like it or not, for at least 6 months. And everybody in the company tries that on for size. It reduces a lot of arguments internally. But yeah, I think that
Why is that?
well,
Why is that?
because salespeople come back, they're the voice of the customer. They come back in saying, "We need to do this. We need to do this. This is what has to happen." And then inside the organization, there's often resistance, saying, "Well, that's inconvenient," or "That's not how we do things," or "Go tell the customer that we only make it in green and yellow. We don't do blue." Whatever. And but the salespeople coming into a company are speaking for the customer. They're not trying to make people's life inconvenient. And I think the more you can get people out in front of customers, the easier that is. And to the point that um, saying we don't know is a setup for your customers saying, "You guys are brilliant." Because when you come in
Uh,
and say, we know this, we know that, then it's a question of testing that. When you say, "We don't know, but we're going to, we're going to get there. We will know we're the best in our business," which we were. We're going to get there. When you do, they don't come away saying, "Well, you were right." They come away thinking, "These guys are brilliant." They went from,
so you
"We
had a,
don't know
but you
yet,"
had a,
"We know."
you played a role that I've seen you do this too, and you're really good at it. You're a good facilitator. You ask good questions, and you seed the questions with knowledge. In other words, it's not like you're a blank slate. Okay, what you do is you give the questions content, which have me believe, man, he knows what he's talking about, and the facilitating stays what you facilitate and keep people on track to an end. You know, a desired endpoint, and that's just a gift that you have. That's pretty. I never thought about it now until you're saying that.
Well,
So you
thanks.
perfected that when you were working there at Porex.
I don't know if I perfected it, but I think there's merit to it, and I do the best I can. I had a boss who said to me, he was a very funny guy. He was my first boss when I had my first marketing job. And he said, of marketing, he said, "This isn't sales. Salespeople say stuff. Marketing people ask questions." And he said, "The great thing about asking questions is as long as you're asking questions, you don't have to answer one." So he said, just keep asking questions. He was the same boss who said to me, I got a product manager job when I was 27. And he congratulated me, welcome to the team. And he said, "You got a lot to do in your two years here." And I was taken aback. I thought, 2 years. I said, "Am I already being drummed out of the organization before I start?" And he said, "No, no." He said, "Bill, you're a product manager." And this was in this laboratory equipment distribution company. He said, and it was a big one. It was the leader in the space, CanLab, part of American Hospital Supply. He said, this is what I mean by that. He said, "You're a product manager. As you come in and how what's to make that role effective. He said, I can't afford to have somebody in this role who knows why something cannot be done. And so I took a minute, but I knew what he meant, because conventional wisdom gets in people's way more than anything else. They assume
Huh.
they know. They assume, oh, yeah, of course, this can happen. This always happens. That can't happen. But he said, I can't have anybody in that role who knows why something can't be done. So he needed somebody who had nothing but optimism, because from that would come a solution. No solutions
And
ever
that's
came from
pretty cool.
pessimism.
And you were put into that position at 27 years old.
Yeah, yeah,
So you were still filled with idealism.
sure.
Okay. As opposed to the 55-year-old, which is, man, I have been there and I have done that. This will not work. Right.
Right. Who tell the
Because
27
we
year olds.
create these biases based on our experience.
Sure.
We all do. I mean, that's something that we do. Sure.
And that's where
Well,
you
I had a question though
separate
about this.
people. Hmm.
I had an entrepreneur that I dealt with who was real big at asking, "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?" So he subscribed to the really smart people, and he would bring them all together, and we'd talk about it and do all that. But it's like he never would pull the trigger on direction or idea. It was always, the whiteboard was always available. It was always open. There wasn't this, okay, here's the play now. There wasn't an end point that it got to. So
Hmm.
this business got mushed around, okay? And you're asking for advice, you're giving advice as a customer or as an investor or as an employee, and it was like it was never taken. It was always invited and received, but it was never applied, if you will. How do you do that? How do you avoid that piece, that you're always in this sort of that you're always in discussion and you never get to the set direction, if you will.
Right. The ready, aim, aim, aim,
What
fire.
would you have said that guy did wrong? You follow me?
Well, I think it's, I don't know the individual, but that's something that happens. Oftentimes people who are, and this is a problem with a lot of founders, who won't get in,
Okay.
they won't get there. Here he has a room full of smart people, but is not going to use it because he's already decided what he wants the outcome to be. And I've seen this. So you invite people around waiting for someone to say what you think, and then you hop on it and say, oh yeah, yeah, there we go. That's, yeah, thanks for the advice. But they're really fishing for somebody to come up with what they already think should be done and create a process around it. And, I admire people who are firm in their decision making and decisive and all this. But when it comes without having really taken advantage of other people's thinking, it's a problem. Look at young founders. Like I describe being a CEO of a large multinational company, and it was a lot of fun. And I tried to make it as personal as I could. It's hard. But those principles that you have to use when you can't touch everything, going to a founder or a CEO, when I talk to them as a mentor or sitting on a board, I tell them, you have to think exactly the same way. You have to think about uh, uh, take advantage of the thinking of other people. You don't have to jump to a conclusion. Smart people don't decide right away. They think first and act second. But big or small, it's the same principle. Be available to a better way to do it. You'll get credit for it anyway if you're the leader. I got credit for things, when I was running Porex, that I had to go back and find out what they were after I was thanked by a customer for something that was accomplished. And so that's really what it is. You have people who are already set in their way, and then they're going through this charade of pretending they really want to know what people think, but they're just waiting to hear that one piece of advice that matches what they thought, and then saying, great,
Man,
we have a
you
consensus.
that I think you're absolutely right. I think I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it. I sort of marked it up to, I don't ever want to be responsible for a bad outcome. So if we never really do something, then I'm not responsible for a bad outcome, but I am responsible and get credit for keeping the train on the tracks, if you will.
Mhm.
Even though it's not producing what it should produce. So it was almost. I love the process. This is what I thought it was. I love the process. I don't want to get to a conclusion because that's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
But
Well,
now you're saying something that I hadn't thought about, which is I already know what I want to be done. And so instead of just making the decision and plowing forward, I'm just going to talk to these people forever and
mhm.
get their ideas and never really do anything because no one really hits on the one idea that I really think we should do.
Yeah, and you know
That's
that
crazy.
it is, and it's unusual for a founder. I would think it's because it takes all types. There's 10 companies, 10 founders. You have 10 different people, and
Yeah.
they all behave differently. But it's in their best interest. They have to make a move. These are businesses and people that have to be in motion, and they have to make significant progress, or they're not going to go anywhere. They might survive for a while, but never take that position they need as the leader or best in class or new standard of performance, which is what they all have to get to for it to
Let
be
me ask you
profitable.
this. Did you ever get to, when you did this, okay, and got everybody involved, you come and set a direction.
Mhm.
And did you ever have a direction that you set, okay, that had the right resources, even had the right people, but it didn't work?
Mhm. Sure. Oh
Did you
yeah,
have
that's
that?
sure did.
How as a CEO do you get to how do you kill your baby? I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? I mean, everybody was in it. It looked right. It sounded good. No, and we're off and running, and ain't nobody buying it. Or somebody came in and you found out that they're just going to take the market from you.
That
What do you do? How do you step into that one? Because that's another one of those. You said I made a mistake because in the end, it's not 20 people who made a mistake.
Mhm.
It's you that made the mistake.
Right,
You
right.
spent the money. All right.
That's right.
So it could be everybody's idea, but when it works, but it's your idea when it didn't work. So how do you do that as a CEO? You have a story on that?
Yeah, I sure do. Several. And I can tell you that's the lonely part of the job. You can talk about
Okay.
teams and building and everything, which is a great part of the job, but there are the lonely moments too, and those are those moments. So, because you're not blaming anybody in your organization, you never should. You take responsibility uh, if something doesn't work, and then when you have to change, you
But how do you get to that
there's
point where
one
you go,
way to
it's
do
not
it.
working?
Oh, well, then you take a look, you constantly assess whether the view is worth the climb, right? Like we're going to have to continue to do this to get to this place we think is available to us, this successful point in the market, this penetration point, whatever. And when it becomes apparent that's not going to happen, you have to decide it's not going to happen. And you have to acknowledge why, and you have to talk to people about that. You have to test whether
Okay.
the thinking's right. But most importantly, that conversation doesn't take place unless you know where you're going to
Mm.
alternatively, because there's a whole
Well,
organization of people, they want to hear. Yeah, everybody's disappointed if something doesn't work out, but the consequences are greater if they think we're just standing here not knowing what to do next. So you have to have that lined up, and that's a constant process anyway of force ranking your opportunities. And if number three isn't going to work, you go to number four, and you know how you're going to do it. And people get behind that. They'll get, and that just shows. And I can tell you, in a big company, you spend millions on something. Sometimes you have to pivot, just like a small company. All these founders talk about having to pivot.
yeah, but the
When I
difference the
well,
different thing with a small company, I always say that startups are basically one strategy companies. In other words, it works, and if it doesn't work, it's another company. It's a
yeah,
different deal. Okay,
right,
particularly if you change markets. Now it's okay. Well, we're done with this company. Let's shutter this company and let's kind of move on to the next company. Yet we
right,
have these walking dead, right? Is what we have because well, we got all these investors. and some investors don't want to shut it down, and they're willing to keep it going. And the founder doesn't know this other market, so he wants to keep it. And it's walking dead. It's never going to make money ever. You know, it'll
Right.
never be successful. You said a product isn't successful unless somebody pays for it. Okay.
That's right.
Or has the
Right.
chance to be successful, I should say, till somebody pays for it. But yeah, it's a crazy world. So how did you come out of these are lessons that you learned? One of the things that I thought was interesting for me is when we sold our company way back when I was 28 years old,
Hmm.
and we sold our company. I was in a startup from 22 years old, right? So at 28, 6 years later, we sell our company. I'm working with a brilliant entrepreneur. We worked together. We brought some great people on board. I learned from them. It was incredible. And then we sold our company. And then I learned what really smart people look like.
Hmm.
I was selling into small businesses,
Hmm.
being a small business. I got into these corporations. This was through my 30s. I mean, I was amazed at the brilliance of the people in the rooms. Yeah, I was sitting there as a young entrepreneur, as a young executive, and I would just listen to some of these vice presidents speak and present, and the way they comported themselves and the questions that I remember taking notes, going, that Bill guy, he is great. That's a great idea, and that's the way you do it, and all. And so I really got an appreciation for you know companies like Porex and the people that you're talking about that were in that room, which you don't get in a startup, in generally speaking,
Well, I
right?
just,
You get passion in a startup in a lot of cases, but not those top quality, those not top quality, experienced executives, if you will. You see, and developers and all. So, how did you, when you made your move to sort of this startup thing? How did you it's easy to find yourself as being the smartest guy in the room.
well, I suppose you can, but I mean, when I came out of but everybody's smart at different things. I think that's really what it boils down to. I'm not an
Okay.
entrepreneur. I never started a company. Now, I put money behind a joint venture or a development of a technology or a collaboration or something, but that was pulling money out of my own kitty. I mean, it was easy in that regard. And so I'm not smart at the same things. When I work with these early stage companies, what I tell them is I don't know the journey from the earliest stage and all the sacrifices that went into that. I never lived that. But I know what success looks like. I know what a customer sounds like when they're saying, I can't do without this. When they adopt a product and into the way they adopt it into the way they operate. When you've really made that connection, when you have that success. And so that's the place we're going. Now, to get there, decisions have to be made, whether you're a small company or large, a CEO is the leader, still a
What's
person
their reaction? What's
going to
their
make.
reaction when you tell them that? I think that that's brilliant. What you tell them is, one is you're saying, I don't know what it looks like of what you've been through for the last 24 months. Okay. Or maybe it was even 24 months prior to that before you started the company, right? But I've never done that, but I do know. So I can't relate to that, but I can tell you, I know what success looks like. That is so disarming, and encouraging at the same time. What kind of That's my reaction to it. What reaction do you get from these entrepreneurs?
It's mixed. I think that there are entrepreneurs, for example, who say, "I only want to talk to other entrepreneurs because everybody else
Right.
they don't get it. They don't quote get it." They're right, but the point is, you just talked. This is the room full of smart people. The room's bigger than you think, and there are more rooms. It's good to talk to fellow entrepreneurs about those pain points. but they all bang their head on a ceiling at some point. And the ones that succeed lean into people who know things they don't. That's the whole key. You need to, they need to know what they don't know. They need to know that they're gonna know. And that's the separation. So the response I get is mixed from those people who think they know and that I don't get it. They're correct at some level, but at some level, they're going to need to know things they don't know. That founder who says, I know what I know, there are things I don't know, but I know I'm going to know. I know I'm going to find out those things I need to know. And then they embrace, when they get in that room, they want to know. Again, when I say I know what it looks like when it gets there, I've acquired a lot of little companies. I've marketed a lot of technologies and scaled them. It comes down to the person. Some are going to win, some are going to lose, and I think that's a big difference in those that say I'm going to learn from people. Because I think that for these founders, they're the conventional wisdom they don't have. You talked about a big company. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have that, but it should be a grounding experience. It's humbling, it's validating, and it's very positive for a founder if they're open and it's not threatening. And I think that's the difference between two types of founders. And I think it is a difference between success and fail. So,
Do you, when you run into the founders that I mean, this is an obvious one. That say they meet with you and all that, and you just either they say it or you get the feeling is they're thinking you don't get it.
mhm.
Okay. Is that your cut point? Is that where you go, oh, yeah, you're probably right, and then just sort of walk on?
um,
Even if it's to be a good idea and it seems like there's a market opportunity here, maybe it could be a good investment, presuming good return on investment, presumably. But there's this guy leading it who's doesn't seem to value you for what you know.
yeah, I mean, it's
You've run
interesting.
into that, okay?
Sure. And I think that, uh, and by the way, it's because I do ask a lot of questions and I'm trying to learn. So when I'm working with an early stage founder, I have a lot of questions because of the things I don't know. And that's okay. I don't mind not knowing, but I'm going to find out. And in that case, when they say, you just don't get it, I acknowledge that. I say, that's quite possible I don't get it. But I want
Huh.
to. Let's try this again. It really depends on how recalcitrant the position is. Because if I see somebody, and I've seen it, I won't name names, where I know they obsess about what doesn't work. That's a classic. You have a theory, you've got a business, you're going, you're the one strategy, as you say, and you're going after it, but your market isn't going to respond. It could be because of reimbursement, it could be because of regulatory issues, product doesn't hit the mark, and people obsess about that. And when I talk to them about what does success look like, write that down instead of writing down what you do. Write down what does it look like and see what the gap is. And they say you just don't get it. You just don't get that the product I'm making is the best of its kind. And when you hear people say this is the killer, the customer doesn't get it. That's a classic. Customer doesn't get it.
Oh
Well,
boy.
that person's doomed. And because the customer always gets it and they make a decision. But so I try to work around that if I believe it's an earnest effort on both sides. But yeah, there are times when you just say, I don't think I can help you.
Right.
I'll always answer the phone. Call me if you need me. But there are times you do walk away.
Which they never do. If you've gotten to that, which they never do. I'm with you on that. It is. And then you've got those that just don't respect all the experience that you have because you're not an entrepreneur. And really, I can only speak to entrepreneurs. So I have to seek out an entrepreneur who's maybe 10 years older than me, who sold this company and all that. He's going to know best,
Yep.
and that's not always the truth, you know, because that entrepreneur might need another 10 years in order to know best,
True.
right? It's
Not
even more experience.
yeah, and there is an element of luck and timing, like gut instinct matters, perseverance matters. All of these qualities in an entrepreneur matter. But some entrepreneurs, it's happened to me in my career in different places. You get lucky, things work out, and you really do get lucky, and you find an opening, or you meet a distributor or a business partner, or somebody who can open the doors, and all of a sudden you have a real success. And the honest founders, and I know a couple, will say, I didn't know it was going to be that big. I didn't know that was the door that was going to open to make the big difference, that relationship or that distributor or that technical partner. But they took advantage of it when they came upon it. The company's a success. They got lucky. That luck matters. And so when they're talking to some young founder who says, wow, you sold your company for $50 million, and you're
Right.
obviously the role model for this. Well, not necessarily, because there could be some strokes of luck in that that aren't reproducible for the founder looking for the advice. And they need to, their path is going to be different. They have to stick to discipline and stick to a path, because they're, unless, and a stroke of luck comes, that's great, but you can't count on it. So, that's another thing
Yeah,
too. Like,
I always said that. I said that too, and that's a great observation. Is just because I always say it's a blessing and a curse, to wind up selling your company at 33 years old for $50 million. Okay,
mhm,
because you never had, you know, you happen to be that guy or gal that did something that only happens in most cases, if you're lucky, once in a lifetime. I call it your right place, right time, and the market turned on for you.
yeah,
So you don't have to create demand, it's demand pull. It's just that everybody all of a sudden wants what you have. And that happened to me in one company in my life. And it was the first one that I was actually involved in.
mhm,
Orders coming in all over the place. I was the smartest general manager on the planet.
sure,
Okay. And then my next role was working for a big company, and I went into professional services, which had a plethora of competition. Okay. And there was cost issues, and there were pricing constraints. It was a real business. And you had to balance your economic model, and you had to lead well, and you had to execute every single day,
mhm,
which is, I would say, 99% of the businesses that are out there. Okay.
it
It's
is.
getting to that. And it's sort of like, where's Tesla, at this point? It went from the only game in town with great vision and this demand pull. Now we've got, now we're all doing discounting. Now we got 6 months of inventory sitting in parking lots, okay, all over America. Now what do we do? Okay.
That's right.
Now this truck that I just did, I could do nothing wrong. Now this truck that I said was going to cost 40 grand cost $110,000. Well, that limits the market. All right. Your local plumber's not buying that one. All right. So it's interesting that's at some point you get to real business. And until you do, you're not the greatest business guy in the world. You have to go through all of those different things, those different markets and different product cycles and conditions in order to really be experienced.
Yeah, I think.
God bless you if you got the market pull one though. If the market turns on, just drop to your knees, thank God, and say, "Man, am I lucky?"
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, that I absolutely agree. And take advantage of it. Recognize an opportunity when you see it, capitalize it. But it's hard to build everything off of that. It's like salespeople, hiring salespeople over the years. Where they came from mattered. Salespeople that
Oh,
interviewed with Porex or at Bard and said, yeah, I was with some company, that Oracle, or on the software side, or Salesforce now, or it's these companies that have terrific products. And this isn't a knock on anybody in those organizations, but I think of companies
no,
like
but they
that
have
who are
terrific
just in
brand
class.
recognition
Well,
and product, right? I
it,
mean,
yeah, but
yeah.
these products that deliver, these are the best in class
Mhm.
solutions. And
Right.
there are others I can think of. But when you sell that, I congratulate them for their success. But if the product, quote, sells itself, that's not selling me on why I should hire them as a salesperson. And so instead, you talk to people who say, I was in it was a, it was a knife fight every day out there in the market, trying to maintain my customers, gain new business. We had to constantly reinvent our value proposition to take advantage of the best parts of, and so on and so forth. And their sales grew 10% a year versus somebody who doubled it every year. Those are the people we hired because the product didn't sell itself, because luck didn't
It's
play in.
interesting. When we were in, here we were in the. This was back when I was in my 20s, and there were back then, and we were selling software to CPAs. Okay, and back then, there was hardware guys, and there was very few software guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because software as a packaged solution or as a product was just sort of coming into as something it started to become real in the mid 70s when we kind of got involved with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd get the people that we were most successful with, the sales guys, were Burroughs Corporation's sales guys. I don't know if you ever even heard of Burroughs,
Sure.
but Burroughs competed with IBM. Okay. Those guys were the best salesmen because they didn't have the best products. But boy, they were professional salesmen. If they were hitting their numbers, they were good.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst guys that we had were the successful guys that wanted to join us from IBM. And the reason I always said was, with that guy, he was used to calling up, cold calling a customer and saying, I'm Charlie Paparelli. I'm with IBM. I specialize in the banking industry. We have some very forward looking products that are coming down the line. Would you meet with me? Sure.
Yep.
Sure. You're IBM. I mean, their sales, their cash balance. This reminds me of where we are today with people like Apple. Their cash balance at that time was greater than the combined sales of the nearest 7 competitors. That's how, and that's kind of Apple, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Apple's sitting there with that same kind of thing, with that kind of cash balance, and that's who they're competing against. But they
That's
did get knocked off of it. But you're right about the sales guys. You want the scrappy guys. You want the guys that didn't just happen to catch the fast train leaving the station, because they're all the smartest people. They're order takers.
yeah. And and that's where
Great place to be as a sales guy, though. By the way.
it can be a great place to be, but competition makes everybody better. And in that,
Yeah.
you listen to smart people, and you get a little bit from everybody, but you have to do it. And nobody's so great they don't have to listen, or they're just not the greatest. And those sales careers aren't the longest lasting. If I'm not picking on IBM, but I know exactly who you're talking about. Once their product advantage is gone, then they don't know what to do next. And I think that's going back to the early stage companies. Yeah, I mean, some of them come up with great product ideas. They're not successful because they don't know how to market it, so nobody will ever acknowledge it as the best product. But where they do have a great
Right.
product, too many of them, barriers to entry are low. They don't think about how to deal with emerging competition. You've heard it. How many pitches have you heard where somebody gets up and says, "This is our company, this is our business, here we go," and then they say, "And there's no competition. Nobody can do what we do." And you think, you know what? You're not getting anywhere saying that. It's It's
Or
huge, huge
the other
risk.
side that they do is they forecast, and they may be in a position like that,
Mhm,
and then they forecast and they have these high gross margins, and they just continue to forecast them going forward year on year.
mhm.
Well, I always say if there is truly that much margin in the product, it will not last
Yeah,
because competition will come in
yeah.
and they'll start eating away at that.
Mhm.
Okay. And then it'll be a normalized market for a normalized product. At some point, it always happens. It has to.
Sure.
It's just the way the world works. But
That's
what
unfortunate.
about how did you get from that I was with GRA and I was helping these guys out. So I'm president CEO of Porex. I retire. I'm set. Okay. And now I'm going to, I'm set financially. I mean, I'm put in place. I've got my retirement plan, whatever it might be. And then but I'm not done. I'm a young guy still, and I got a lot of ideas and a lot of experience, and I want to share with people and help. So you get to GRA and you start getting involved with some of their companies and talking to some of their eminent scholars and all that.
Mhm.
How did you move from there to say, I'm going to risk some of my own money and become an angel investor?
Well,
Because you could have just stayed in the room with the smart people. Okay.
yeah, that's true. I think that,
So why did you make that next leap, if you will?
well, I think I really, the investing side really followed the inspiration side. And let me explain it this way. So I'm a GRA, and uh, Susan says, you need to talk to Frank Ty. Frank Ty's the head entrepreneur in residence at ATDC. And so talk to Frank. I can't, I thought ATDC, and I still do, it's fabulous what's going on in there. All those companies. Building that size, you have 30 amazing things going on, not one or two, like in a big company. And you get inspired by that. And then you get involved. I got involved as a mentor. I would get out to other smart rooms like Angel Lounge or smart rooms, whether it's sitting on a board or, other investment groups over at ATA, and opportunities present themselves. And then I'm not investing to put food on the table, but I want to make money at it because money made
Let
is
me ask you this:
invest.
when you were doing the GRA type work and you
Yep.
started doing mentoring some of their companies, did you have an intention even back then to become an angel investor? In other words, to put your money on the line.
Um, I I had an interest, but not a driving
Okay.
intention to do it. My first
Okay.
intention was to get involved in what I thought were a lot of fascinating things. And I'm not a consultant. Not I've never charged a nickel for any idea I've had. Not that anybody would pay a nickel for it, but I just had the intention to get into that room. And so I did. And then I was fascinated. And then when I found things that inspired me, that's when I was inspired to invest in it. I said, you know what? And I invest in a lot of medical technologies, small emerging medical or healthcare technologies or software, because I think they're important and it's a space I know. And materials,
You stuck to your industry knowledge is
pretty
basically
much.
what you did.
Yeah, there are some
Because I'm
exceptions.
sure when you were talking to ATDC companies and GRA and all that, they were off in a lot of different technologies and a lot of different markets, and they were all interesting.
Right.
But you did not put money into something that you didn't really understand.
Yeah. Well, there, not that I didn't understand.
Like deep.
Yeah, I have some,
I mean, I get you understand it here, but
yeah,
there's a secret sauce in every industry, right? I
sure.
mean, that's
Sure. And
yeah.
and and I think they're products that are important. So I can look at them and say, if this product succeeds, a lot of people benefit from that. That's something that
Uh-huh.
improves the world. Why not? I mean, if I'm going to invest, I should be proud of the outcome. So that's how I really started to invest. And like joining ATA, you get in a room and you learn the thinking of successful angel investors. And how do they look at it? Because it's one thing to get behind a great idea, but you don't want to get behind one that's going to crash and burn. So there's a discipline to it. So you meet people who know how to do it, who have been there, done that. And then that got me more actively involved as an investor. And now things that I go into, sometimes I'm the lead hand, so to speak, and I'm bringing other people along into it. But it's typically something that I find purposeful. And so that's really how that kind of rolled out. But I didn't come out of it, as I said earlier, I didn't have a grand plan that I'm checking boxes to make sure I'm on track. Never did. I followed things that I found inspiring. And so the investing side of it really followed the, interest I had in just being part of it.
What's interesting to me is you're the only other person that I've heard say that. That when you know you said if the product is success, I can see that if the I could see where they were, and if the product was successful, it would benefit a lot of people, right? And you said that in the end, I when if as the company grows, I want to be proud to be associated with that company for
Mhm.
what the people that they're helping. I heard an interview with one of I think the Koch brother that's alive now. Is it Charles Koch? Is that his name?
I can't remember.
I heard whatever his name. One of the Koch brothers from Kansas,
Yep.
right? From Koch Industries, KOCH. I heard him being interviewed, and he said something that was so simplistic and so elegant about business that I just never forgot it. And you just reminded me of it. He said, "We invest in businesses that help people and make money doing it. We know we invest in businesses that make people's lives better and make money doing it." That's what he said. And
Mhm.
he said, if we're in a business in any of our portfolio where one of those two things is not true, we sell the business.
Mhm.
And I was like, there's not a better definition for business than we're in business to make people's lives better and make money doing it. And if I can't make them better, and if I can't make money while I'm trying to make, I got to get out. I thought that. What do you think of that?
I think that's terrific. And I hadn't heard that before. And I'm familiar with the Koch brothers because of their high profile and in politics and
Yeah,
things like that. But Koch Industries um, is a very innovative company. They're in some traditional industries. Filtration is a big space, but I think that's
okay.
terrific. That's how people should look at it. And I don't think it's a surprise either, because if you have a product that truly makes people's lives better, they will want to embrace it. You said it earlier. There's a demand out there that people are demanding your product versus you going to sell it. If you're making their life better, that's what people are after. And
That's
and
it.
so
Yeah.
that is a great strategy. And it means you've gone the route to understand your customer. Like you've made your customer part of your decision process in your business. And those are the successful businesses. So I think that's insightful, and I think
What
it's a
was it?
great formula.
What is it then when you? So I see this how you've kind of progressed from corporate through to these smaller companies, right? And into the community, through GRA and then eventually ATDC by working with Frank Ty, right?
Mhm.
So you got this exposure now. So you go from this corporate view to this sort of personal view on helping people in these more startup activities, if you will, younger companies.
Mhm.
What was the first deal that you actually did that says, I'm putting money in this deal?
Boy, the
What made you, maybe you don't even want to name the company, and I respect that, okay? But it's just like, what made you do it? Because that's stepping into the abyss, all right?
right. It
That's
is
called skin in the game, buddy, okay?
it it was a company that, and this was materials. It was not medical device, but it was a company that made innovative materials that
Okay.
for electronics and aerospace that were applications in those spaces. And the use of the materials was not only superior because it was simpler to use and it took cost out, but it replaced um, high polluting, messy solutions that were hard, that you couldn't recycle, that were a disaster in a landfill site, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And it didn't make me a tree hugger per se, although I support causes that improve the environment. But it was something that would make the world better. It would make common products more effective, efficient, and also solve disposal issues. And for it was really nasty byproducts of the
What
current
was the
solution.
economic model for that? That seems different than Porex, which actually got into would buy materials and then make products. This seems to be almost an intellectual property play based on royalties. Is that
No,
what
it
was the
was
economic model for the company that you're investing in?
well for this company. It was just taking common materials and
Yeah.
using them differently to create a new product. It was a really elegant solution to an age old problem, and that's really what it does. It was one of those where you think, well, why didn't somebody think of this sooner? But there's so many industries where products that are
What were
used.
they manufacturing products? Like
Yeah.
what was the model? So can you share the model with me? How did they have revenue and make money?
Oh, it's just by
What
just
were they selling?
they just manufacture an innovative manufacturing process, innovative materials, which were
Okay.
alternatives to something that was already out there. They held, it was very similar to Porex in that they held all the IP. They knew that it was their process was proprietary, and they took a finished product to a customer. And that product, which was an ingredient in a larger product, the component, was a superior solution. And so they took it out there, and it actually was pretty simple and it is simple for people to adopt it. The difference is there's so many industries, and this is something you learn over
What
time. People don't use what's best; they use what's easiest sometimes. And like in a large company, if for them to adopt a new product, sometimes they have to change other things they do. And
right.
if you wanted to use a new material on a plastic soda bottle, well, you've got to change your equipment, the speed it runs at, other things that interact with it, and people just stick with what they know. And sometimes it's very hard to take on a new innovation, but and
Well,
that's
with
true.
this particular,
But this, I'm
I
sorry.
get that.
Mhm.
But what do you I get what you were saying, and I appreciate that. And selling small companies selling into big companies, they don't understand that. Okay,
Mhm.
what you're just outlining. Having been in manufacturing, having been in the bigger company, and having dealt with bigger companies all your career, you
Yeah.
understand the complexities. And people sit there and they go, I'm I'm 7 years from retirement. I don't need to deal with this. Okay. I don't want to be the champion of this thing and work that much harder to make it what's best for the company. This is working.
Yep.
And then you kind of and you're saying like, well, how do you move that guy? How do you get around that guy to sell
Oh,
the company to can you find the guy that's really interested in taking it really interested in representing the company as best he possibly can and its interest? We don't find a lot of that in bigger companies
it's
because they
hard.
don't reward it. They punish it. Yeah.
Sometimes they punish uh, innovation, or they punish the adoption of a good idea because it interrupts. There's a short term interruption. You're right. Happens all the time. And this is very similar with Porex or in the medical device space or anywhere else. People say, who is your customer? My customer is IBM. My customer is General Motors. No, no. Your customer is somebody named Bill at IBM. There's Bill and Jane
Right.
and Mary. And Bill, Jane, and Mary are really the people who are going to decide whether you're going to get past the lobby. That's really what it's about. Same thing at General Motors, same thing with any customer. So you're really appealing to somebody who, in turn, is going to inconvenience themselves to make a change in order for a much greater good. And sometimes, if they're a few years from retirement, you're right. But so the key, and I say this to all these early stage companies too, you might have a better product, but if it's a medical device, the reimbursement system may not reward it. You need to solve that issue. Everybody's got those issues of how their product gets adopted, but you have to get to know that customer. You have to get further in. And oftentimes with products that
Right.
are a solution that you have to get by, Bill and Mary and Jane, you figure out what's going to appeal to the CEO or to the marketing people at a company or to the production heads. What are they going to pull through? How do you reach those people and say, if you had this product, this would enable your product to do X, Y, and Z, in which case you'll sell more
Mhm.
and you'll have more successful customer relationships. And that is knowing your customers. So the small companies that take a product and then say that all their energy goes into optimizing that product without putting the energy into knowing not only who will buy it, but how they will buy it. And it goes to the age old question. And I listen for it all the time. Don't tell me who would buy your product and give me these pie charts of how big the market are. Tell me who must buy it, not who would buy it. Who must buy this? And
Mm.
that's the test. So anyway, that's the test for every business. Why must somebody buy the product? And
No,
that's
it makes
very
sense.
hard to get to. It's very hard. It's much easier to do pie charts
Yeah.
on a slide.
Oh, it is. Yeah, how big the market is, and if we got 3% of the market, we'd be a $1.2 billion company, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've been there. But with this first company that you were involved in, um, one of the things you did, I just want to recap this, is in case a potential angel investor who's listening to this
Mhm.
um, doesn't see it, because I see this all the time. Somebody comes out of a corporate life, they've amassed some wealth, and they still want to be involved, and they like the idea of angel investing. And what they do is somebody introduced them to a deal, and they they see the hair on it, but they see the opportunity, and they do all that they can to sort of convince themselves that it's going to work and it's going to be great. Okay, but they've only seen one deal.
Hmm.
It's sort of like if you see one baseball player, that's the best baseball player you've ever seen in your whole life. All right. One thing that you did is you got involved. You left corporations and you got involved with GRA, and then you got involved with ATDC, and you just kind of floated around, and you got to see all the baseball players,
Yep.
or you saw a lot of them. Okay, not all of them, but you saw a lot of them.
Sure.
And so you started creating sort of buckets, right? Oh, that's pretty interesting, but that not going to work. Or this is this is interesting but has promise. This thing looks like, people can't not buy this product, right? I mean, they they have to, right?
Hmm.
Or these are the entrepreneurs. Boy, I really love these guys, and they've got a good. These are entrepreneurs that I like the entrepreneur. Bad market though. It's never really going to make money. And this other one is he's an okay entrepreneur. And then there's this great entrepreneur that has real good industry knowledge.
Hmm.
Okay. So you start looking at all these different things. So when someone comes to you, you go, that's the one. I read something that recently with this Charlie Munger death,
Hmm.
he said, be patient and wait for the absolute right deal. Okay.
Hmm.
And there was another. I saw that sub quoted by what's it, Warren Buffett, and he said, We wait for the big fat pitch.
Yeah.
And I think there's some truth to that. Have you seen, well, with what you did, this first company that you got involved in, uh, you looked at probably 30 companies, not thinking you were going to invest, but with this one you did. What were the criteria as you look back and say, this is what brought me to the decision? Here's the three things or five things that
Well,
got me there.
I would think that of all the investments I've made, and I'll say from a angel stand, the angel investments, there's probably about 15. I would say
15 investments.
my thinking was clearest on the 15th and foggiest on the first. And I think it's because of the criteria that I used. Um, I was inspired and I thought, this will really make a difference. This is something. This is really something. I like it. I'd like to be involved with it. And you want to make a return, but that almost didn't matter. It was just to be involved. We'll see where all that turns out. But for right now, it's great. This is something I'm really inspired by. I think that's true of a lot of people who get into angel investing. And I know that because people who have followed me, they'll get hot on some idea and ask me about it. And I don't want to put cold water on the idea, but I do put some questions back to them. And I say, here's some things that I look at. And so as I go along, I mean, it's more disciplined, and and I'm still inspired. There's still things that I look at and I say, yeah, that'll make the world a better place. That'll help people's lives, and I go for those. But it is a more disciplined process as I go along. Only because, and the main
What is
reason
it that,
is
so let me get off of that first one then. So
okay.
the first one was, hey, this product is clearly going to make a difference. I believe it.
Yeah,
And I I was inspired by it,
yeah,
okay, and what it could be and how it could change people's lives for the better.
yeah.
Okay?
Hmm.
Okay. What other criteria as you've gotten to this 15th deal, what are the criteria that you look for that says, here's what made me do the 15th deal? One of it had to be those things. You had to be inspired. Still,
Yep.
right? But what else?
I think that as I get into the up towards the 15th, the sustainability or the doability of the company to execute on a plan becomes more and more important. The founder, I think, becomes more important because I understand the founders better than I used to. I could always look at technology and say, okay, I get this is how it works. But the other elements come into play. I'm a big believer that you're investing in that founder and and that'll make a huge difference. So that is what I spend more and more time on. And when I talk about the business from an execution standpoint, it's not about having a great product and having people who want to buy it. Some of these are more sophisticated, so it requires a reimbursement system in healthcare and how all of that is going to come
Right.
together because the best medical products are still on a shelf. Sadly, they're still on a shelf. And it's because we have a system that hasn't recognized how to pay for it or who would pay for it
Right.
or how to knock, the big players have strangleholds on certain elements of the medical device industry.
Yeah, but
And
what you're hitting on there is you use the word sustainability.
Mhm.
In other words, is this thing going to make money at some point? It has to have free cash flow at some point. That to me defines sustainability.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure
You
does.
can't generate enough revenue at a reasonable price
Mhm.
so that you cover your costs and you have some left over. If you can't have a model that's that simple and it works, you're not going to be around.
Right. And I think,
Okay, so that's what you're talking to there without getting into the reimbursement possibilities because that's what that's about.
Sure.
If I got a great product, I can get reimbursed and my revenue is going to be compromised. I'm going to have too much cost and I'm going to just continue to need investor money.
Right.
Well, that ain't going to work.
Mhm. Well, it is.
You got to make a profit. Okay.
You have to, and a profit is a good thing because that's what fuels the next investment. So, um, but it is like when you talk about a founder, it's a founder. Like when somebody's getting in front of me, and I look at it more closely now, I want to hear somebody articulate exactly what the competition is, as significant as it is, and exactly how they'll deal with it. Because it's not something I'll have to discover down the road. When I look at a founder, that founder is somebody who knows what they don't know, but they know they're going to need to know it. They're going to find out. That is something that has to be uh, that you want to see in that founder, not somebody who knows it all because they
Okay.
don't, not somebody who has no competitors because they don't. And this goes to the sustainability. Let's assuming the technology is compelling and it's the new standard of performance. Can you really deliver it? And I think, and quite frankly, those are things I should know from my past business career. And I do. But the
Mhm.
difference was in those cases, I had all the resources in the world to see it through. I had the ways to overcome all that. With these early stage companies, it's a David and Goliath. And you got to make sure David's prepared, so to speak.
So basically, it came down to you had to be inspired, and it had to be somebody that had to be with a founder who you felt was capable enough and humble enough, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in order to execute on the plan. In other words, to
Mm-hmm.
build a company from just not just revenue, but also to profitability.
Right. And make all the decisions that were going to emerge, just knowing they were going to be there,
Mm.
having somebody who had who was the person who had the team, had the ability, had the smart room to where you had confidence they were going to make the right decisions at the right times going forward on things you didn't know about right now. Yeah, I mean that's
Plus, they had
really the
they had
case.
the ability. You just like scooted by something there, which is they can attract an A-level team.
Hmm.
They can find the people that are smarter than them, if you will. That outside of their expertise, if you will.
That's right.
That takes a special person to be able to do that.
Oh, it does. And what's the expression? If you're the smartest person in the room, then you better find a different room to go to, or something like that. that's
Right.
that's so true, and it's a founder who recognizes that. So,
So you got founder, and then you got plan, you got inspiration, you got product.
mhm.
Those were all of the elements. I didn't hear you say market. You always hear angel investors always say, "Oh, I got to make sure it's a big enough market. It's gonna be it has the ability to be a whatever." Okay,
Well, that's
is market something that's important to you?
it depends. And quite frankly, most markets are big enough. When you go in and you're making an angel investment in a small player, the market may be $100 million. But I mean, if you can turn that into something that's the standard in that market, it's well worth it. But it does bring up another point that I think is important. When a lot of the medical products that I invest in, I look at those and people ask the question, is that a company or is that a product line? Well, it's both right now. But if the market for a certain product, I mean, let me put it this way, the market for car keys is not that big. But if you owned the market for car keys, you would have a something very compelling. Or if you had a better solution on, like if in the medical field, that is a better solution for uh, treating a broken finger. That may be a limited market, broken fingers, but whoever's in the orthopedics business, when they have a best in class product, they're going to acquire that. Suddenly, that's going to be part of Smith and Nephew, and Smith and Nephew is going to use that best in class product to open the door with their market, and bring in all their products. But the lead will be, hey, we've got this best in class product we need to show you. And it may be in an arena where nobody knows how to fix broken fingers. This is a breakthrough. That could be a small market, but in the hands of the acquiring company, who you're going to exit to, that's very, very important. Not just the size of the market, but how it fits into the market of the potential acquirers. So
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense.
complex, but yeah, that's how I.
One of the things I brought up market, but I think that was foolish of me to bring up market, since what you did is you played all your career into the medical device marketplace. And now what you're doing is only looking at companies that are going after that same market, right? So you intuitively know market size, market opportunity. You just, that's intuitive to you because that's your market. You don't need somebody to give you a PowerPoint slide, 5 PowerPoint slides on what the medical device market looks like. You get it. You know the people who are in it. You
Sure.
know the leaders. So I think having that knowledge is also, you didn't even bring it up as a criteria, but it is this sort of, it's part of your criteria because you'll say no to somebody who's making car keys
Hmm.
because don't have a clue of what the car key market looks like. I think that's
Well,
important,
it's really
you know?
that where things fit into a larger demand or a larger market really makes a huge
Yeah.
difference. And so when people set out, especially in the medical device space or healthcare space, or let me say specifically medical devices, you're out to solve a problem. That's usually definable. The product in the hands of a much larger company that walks into a hospital and says, we're here to solve all the problems for your orthopedic patients or all of your cardiovascular patients. These smaller acquisitions are very powerful to them. And in their hands, they scale more quickly. And that's where the great exits are. I can't remember the last time a little company. Oh, yeah, actually, I will. There's a great story to this. It's Intuitive Surgical. Intuitive Surgical, which is a huge major medical device company. Now it's medical equipment. They pioneered robotic surgery. It's a brilliant story. So when you hear robotic
Mm.
surgery, you're hearing about the Da Vinci system from Intuitive Surgical. They had so many
Right.
opportunities to exit along the way, but to major, smaller players and then major players, but they never did. They stuck with it. They built a behemoth. And that's a great thing to see. But at the beginning, somebody was throwing in seed money for that. Now it's a multi billion dollar corporation. So it
Are
happens.
they a public company?
Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah, at some point you got to figure out a way to get your money out, right? I mean, you got to get liquid somehow, And what we generally do is, as angels, is we usually aren't investing in something that can be an industry player long term, right? They're
Right.
just going to get bought by somebody, and that's where we get our money back.
You
Huh?
can, and if it happens, people can sit around and say, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. That's why I invested in it, but I don't believe them.
How much? How much? When you decided that you were going to take the plunge and start investing, what was? How did you decide how much money you were going to put in deals? Because
Um,
that's another decision you
that's,
make. You have guys that say, "Oh, I put $5,000 in 100 deals." Okay,
yeah.
or you
Yeah.
get other people that say, "I put $1 million in 3 deals." All right, so how do you decide? How did you decide
Well, if it was
to
something,
allocate some of this?
yeah, I invest in things that I like and that I can stay on top of, participate in, or be close enough to. So I
Hmm.
don't invest all over the place. And then I look at it depends on the amount raised and whether it's significant enough, whether the money, how I fit into that pie of investment, how the money's going to be used, and how much I believe in it. There's a lot of criteria, but I make it enough so that it's worth following. So it's to support things that we want to support, but it's to also be significant enough so I'm not lost in the equation. And when it's a small company, it can be $50,000 or, you know, up to 100 or something can go a long way. So something in that range,
Okay.
50 to 100,
Yeah.
goes a long way with these early stage companies to get a seat at the table, and you know what I mean? It's, don't have to actively
Do you
participate.
continue to do you then can
You-
if it's starting to work
Yeah.
or you think it's going to work,
Yeah.
they're making progress. Do you continue to do the follow-on rounds?
I do sometimes. And it depends on, that's really a question of whether, uh, if it's a great success and these are VC rounds that should follow. Sometimes I do if I have, pro rata rights. Or if the progress is being made and they're not ready to raise money, I feel an obligation to participate with when they do a raise amongst existing investors. I'll go back in if I believe the company's making progress. So, it's a case by case thing, but I'm definitely open to it.
Have you said no? Have you said no for those in a circumstance like that? The company is making progress, but it's not very clear, the progress that they've made. Yet you put enough money in that you're one of the major players, if you will, in the investment. So there's a lot of pressure on you to put in your pro rata share. Have you ever got to where you say, "Hey, I'm in, I see it," and then they're telling you, if you don't put in your money, I'm not putting my money in. We're just going to let this deal go, and it's going to die.
Yes,
There's a lot of pressure once you're in. What is it? In for a penny, in for a pound. That plays with angel investing in a very big way.
sure. Well,
Calling it to an end, that you're investing that you're doing is very difficult to do since it's communal.
sure, sure. And I think where in
Have you faced
yeah, sure, of course. And in one circumstance, if the company is has no way out, they're raising money to just breathe another 4 months into themselves, and there's no way to get out, then you're cutting your loss. I mean, there's no point now.
that?
That's fortunate. Fortunately, that's only one time, and that I've seen that. In other times, if the times that I wouldn't invest are if I've already put in what I consider a significant amount, because you got to diversify,
Right.
or if they're doing the wrong thing, and I will encourage them to not to bridge again out of convenience, but to actually, if they're at the right place, put to the test an equity raise. If it's time to do that, I will say, not interested in that. I think there needs to be an equity raise. We got to move towards that. And
Got it.
sometimes founders need, a little poke in the side to come to that conclusion.
I got it. All right. Well, we're getting to the end of our little talk here. This has been great. I just have two more questions.
Sure.
Two more. That's it. One is, what advice do you find yourself giving to angel investors? Okay. Say,
Okay.
Bill, you've been doing this for a while now. You've been doing this for a while. You did 15 deals and all that. And, I'm just kind of kicking around. I'm starting to get into it. And I put money into a couple of deals, not working out very well right now. But, so what's your advice to me as an angel investor? Because you know something now.
Well, I
You paid your tuition.
I I guess I have. I don't know. My advice would be the same to anybody, and it would be, if it is to an angel investor, it is,
Yeah.
be prepared to do your homework. Meaning, don't believe a slide deck when you see it. They're great stories,
Mm,
and some people are better at presenting them than others. So don't let that become
right.
the determining factor. So be prepared to put energy in. Secondly, invest in something you believe in and that you're interested in being a part of. I don't
Mm,
think angel investing is, and this, I guess this is the third, don't make a living at it. I talk to people, I know they're investors. Well, invest what you can afford to lose. And schools schools out on whether this is a profitable undertaking at large, but you get different answers to that. But uh, don't make a career out of it unless you're in a VC firm. But so I say look at that, and then uh, when you uh, and this is perhaps the biggest part is to know that you don't know. You have to get in a room full of smart people, and that is 100 different things go well when that happens. You asked me up front, my first investment. Well, you're right. The first one, you're comparing it to a few things. Now I've got a wealth of knowledge, which is not enough, but it's a lot more. Getting in a room full of people who've been there, done that. They tell stories about what worked, what didn't. This is how they got burned. This is where they should have done more of this or that. That is the only way to put your radar up, to be on the lookout for things that don't make sense. It's sort of like when you hear the pitch and somebody says, we have no competition. When somebody puts up a pie chart and says, the market is $50 trillion and who cares? And when you just have to know what to look for that makes it believable, plausible, and 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 important and attractive. You have to put the work into it. So part of putting the work in is getting in that room full of smart people. There's no substitute for getting in a room full of smart people.
Well, how do I find the room of smart people?
Um,
If I'm flat-footed, okay, how do I find the room? How do I get started with that?
the place to start, and if this exists in every major city in the U.S., there are angel investment groups. In Atlanta, the Atlanta Technology Angels. You can also go and join, for example, Thai. Thai has a big chapter in Atlanta, and they focus on education. So you join there. There's a lot you can learn. You're going to find like-minded people.
Mm.
They don't, and when I say like-minded, I don't mean they agree with everything you say or do. I mean they have a common purpose, and
Well,
so
they have it's
look,
like interest. It's
yeah,
like interest is what we have.
sure.
Right. Yeah, I get
And
it.
so find those groups. You can Google it, look it up. It's like angel investing in Topeka, Kansas. You're going to find a group that does that. And angel investors they want to bring more people in. More people in the room
Yeah.
is more learning, more knowledge. Everybody wins. So it's that simple. All of them will invite you out to a meeting, come to a meeting, see some pitches, get to know a few people, and it's the start. And those starts, you don't know what comes next. The only thing you know is that nothing comes next if you don't get started doing that. And I've never met
Yeah, but
anybody.
I think it's really good. If you simplified it really well, is if my goal is to be in a room of smart people,
Mhm,
then what I have to define is what is the common interest that I'm pursuing,
mhm.
right? And if you follow that interest, you're going to wind up with a room full of people with that same interest, and you're looking for the best that there is there. And if I'm in that room, I'm gold. I'm going to learn a whole lot, and I'm going to have some great community and great co-investors and everything else. That's really good. That's really, really good.
Yeah,
What
there's.
about this?
Mhm.
What about the part where you say, okay, entrepreneurs say, what advice do you give me on raising money? At an early stage. I'm early stage, and I'm thinking, I've put my money into the deal, and I've struggled through it all and all that, but I'm getting tapped out, and I need, and my dad stopped putting money in and all that, and I'm ready to. I think, I think I got something now. What should I do? What advice would you give me as an angel investor to entrepreneurs in order to one, should I or shouldn't I raise money from angels, and secondly, uh, how do I decide what angels?
Well, that's a great question. I think that first of all, the entrepreneur should be prepared to engage any investor. They should have a single message and a single pitch. And anybody else in their group, if they have a couple of partners, should have exactly the same script. This is who we are. It's crystal clear.
Okay.
And if you're getting in front of an angel investor or you're getting in front of Berkshire Hathaway, you're saying exactly the same thing. Know yourself, and and know it cold, and be honest about it, and be able to and ask yourself, what would I be asking if I was an investor? Get real with your financial plan, get real with your assessment of competition, get real with the size of the market you can reach, get real with the obstacles, and really understand what the opportunity is. And then with that, and this is another place people fall down all the time, use of funds. When somebody has a valuation of $5 million or $10 million or 25, you say, how did you come to that? Well, we're not sure. We looked at some comparatives. There are no comparatives, not for companies that size. So don't,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to land on a cap on your note or a valuation, you'll get there. But, and you can test that, but the way to push the cap or the valuation up and make it credible is to be really tight on use of funds. That's what I listen to. What do you want this money for? You're raising $1 million. And if somebody has a pie chart that says 400,000 sales, 400,000 product development, 200,000 administration, then they may as well not even bothered. They need to be able to speak, to say, this is, it's like, what must be done? What are the three things you have to do to get to the next inflection point? What do you have to do between now and 18 months from now? The FDA approval or, some other milestone. What are you going to use the money for? And they should be able to say, we've got to spend it on these 2 engineers. We've got to spend money on a consultant who handles regulatory. We've got to spend money to optimize the software to get it from wherever it is to wherever it needs to be. And they have to speak to that. What do you use the money for? Because when they can do that, I believe their plan a lot better. And in my mind, the value goes up. The value goes up, the valuation goes up, or the cap goes up. And it's
I
believable.
think another way to say what you're saying, is to say, if you're raising $250,000, okay, tell me how you're going to spend it,
Mm-hmm.
and what will you will have achieved
Mm-hmm.
having spent that money.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Exactly.
we would have increased our brand recognition, and you're like, not interesting to me. Or
Yeah.
we would have landed our first $600,000 in sales. Oh, okay, that's good, because it's a measurable milestone, kind of a thing. And it shows value recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like that, because they don't know. They have 3 things. We'll spend $30,000 on administration, $20,000 on name it, right? That's how they do it. And you
Yeah.
say, so what does that mean? What
Right.
will you have achieved? But a lot of them, they don't want to sign up for what they'll achieve,
True.
which is kind of interesting, because um,
Yep.
and the numbers get harder. Of course, the longer your company is in business, the more you're held to performance indicators. Okay.
That's right. That's right. But
Yeah.
and angel, one of the thing with angel investors, let them help. Pick wisely. Don't, you can take money from anybody, but have your expectations in line. If you're just taking money, do that. But look for help. Look for people that can help you. And don't try to make your money on angel investors. There are so many people who raise money and they think, wow, I raised $1 million. I'm now a success. No, you're not. You just raised $1 million. But you got to set yourself up for the next raise. You have to accomplish things in order to be successful the next time you raise money, and do it at a price that brings people in and they're your partners. Don't, like I see people go out with these huge valuations and they don't get any serious interest. And it's hard. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. It's always unfortunate for the founder when they're raising at 10 million and the next thing you know, you got an email 3 months later and they say we dropped
Mm.
it to 9, and that's silly. And you say to them, come back when you're at 5 or 4, but you don't even know where to put it. They've lost their credibility. That's not a good thing. They really need to think that.
And when you question them at 9, you've lost your credibility. You don't think they're valuable. And that's the other thing. So you got to rebuild relationship there. What about, I always say this, I like what you're saying is take money from people that can add value to your company,
Mhm.
especially these early stages. Okay. Just don't take money, but take money from people who can add value to the company. Some of them might just, the value they bring is they're just credible.
Mhm.
So if Bill's in the deal, now I'm interested in the deal. Okay. I might not even know the market, but I'm interested because Bill's in the deal. So you bring credibility, but also Bill brings, he knows medical devices. He knows the competition. He knows the hurdles in trying to get, these payers to actually reimburse, okay, for things. So he can bring a lot of value to the company. But I tell people too, is there's another piece to this, that money comes with values, you know,
Mhm.
is it a person? Is that angel somebody who's going to be, you're going to work with well? Or are they going to be that pebble under the saddle or pebble in your shoe, I should say?
Right.
You see,
Mhm. That's true.
that they see how things are going one way and you think you're going the other way, but I needed the money, so I took it anyway. And then it just turns into a mess. Do you
Yeah.
see those things
Oh,
where,
sure.
is that important? Or the value, the value alignment important also in taking money from angels?
Sure. And it is. And I think and I would also say to the entrepreneur, angel investors are a supportive group and an interested group, and you should take advantage of those relationships. But in doing so, you need to communicate. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. Be afraid of not communicating it and having them find it out somewhere else. Like, be open, talk to them, involve them, let them know what you're thinking. You're not going to appear
Mm,
indecisive. You're going to appear professional, like you know what you're doing. I mean, a real founder, a
my
real
God.
leader is confident enough to say, I don't know, but I'm going to. And because you see some of them that say they feel like they can't call up until they're ready to say, this is what I'm going to do. Now they should have an idea. They can't call up and say, I'm at a complete
Well, this
loss.
goes. It's funny. This goes back. This goes back to what we talked about at the
Mhm.
very beginning of this interview. How I was amazed at you to say, I respect the people in the room, that they're smarter than I am, and I'm secure in what I know, but I'm not. I know what I'm not sure what I don't know. So let me. But I'm secure enough to ask, and you ask and you listen, and I'll end with this: is you made a comment that I don't know if I ever heard it before. I don't get paid as the CEO or as the entrepreneur founder. I'm not being paid to come up with a good idea. I'm being paid to recognize a good idea.
Yeah,
I think you said that.
I did. I did.
And I think that yeah, and I think that that's what you're saying now about these entrepreneurs is they think that they have to have it all done, all spit and polished, the perfect presentations, the answer to every single question. And what you lose is you lose your credibility.
Hmm.
And people walk because they say, if that's the way it's going to be to work with this guy, I'm gone. I can't, we're not working together here. I'm not a partner in this. I'm a shareholder in a public company who's being presented to
Right, right. That's
with no
that's true.
voice.
That is
That
true.
is really good. Well, Bill, this has been phenomenal. I knew talking to you that we'd go on for probably far too long, but there's so many nuggets in here for angels and also for entrepreneurs to pick up. You've got such great experience, and also for people who are in management who are looking to be better leaders. So you're just a great man, and
Well,
this has been my pleasure and my honor to interview here.
my pleasure too. And you're kind, and it's just one man's view of the world, and it goes with all the others. So, but it's fun.
All right.
It's been
Well, thank you, and I wish you and Judy Merry Christmas and good luck with you even fourth grandchild that's coming on the way. But if you can hang on when we cut this off, I'd appreciate it.
I sure
So
will.
just kind of stay there.
I sure
Thank you,
will.
Bill.
Thanks, Charlie.